Hello.
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 How's everybody doing?
Splendid. How are you, Danielle
Splendid.
Alvis? You look like a banana.
I'm not a banana. I'm not a piece of fruit.
Doesn't she look like a lovely banana, everybody?
Anyway.
I did say that to her backstage, and she was going to go and get changed, but doesn't. No, don't. It's lovely.
I'm like, she goes, it's a compliment. I'm like, how is that a compliment?
You look like a lovely banana. It's a compliment.
Oh my god. Anyway,
so as we've established, that's Danielle, the banana.
I'm Danielle.
I'm Jamie.
That's Jamie, who's also a bit of a banana.
Yeah. And as promised, we're going to carry on from what we did on Tuesday because there's just so much to cover when it comes to unidentified flying objects, especially with what's going on in the news right now, the news cycle, and everybody's talking about different things, speculating what it could be, couldn't be. So here we are again today to bring you part 2 of the UFO history.
I want to believe.
Yeah, and this might stretch into 3 parts.
It might. We left off with the Aurora, Texas story, if I'm not mistaken.
1897.
In 1897. So this week we're actually going to start in 1909, covering a couple of months here, the summer of 1909.
Yeah, we've made it to the 20th century.
We've made it to the 20th century, exactly.
There's an awful lot in the 20th century, isn't there?
Hello, Bob, Daddy
Hello, Bob.
Yes, Bob.
And everyone else joining us, thank you once again. And we're going to get started. So we're going to take a look here at July and August of 1909. A rapid...
I remember it well.
You remember it well? You'll have to tell us more about that later. So rapid aeronautical advancements had been made worldwide since the 1903 when Americans Orville and Wilbur Wright completed the world's first successful controlled powered flight at Kill Devil Hills near Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Coupled with the fact that there was a fear that the British Empire, who prided itself on its navy, was now vulnerable to attack by air and looming threats coming from Germany, New Zealand was on high alert and people were looking to the sky. So everybody's attention was looking up, right? The wave of mysterious airship sightings began on that evening of July 11th in the South Island, when according to Otago Daily News or Daily Times, several Katangata residents reported observing the mysterious light of a possible airship for 30 minutes as it bobbed in and out of view to the east over the Wangaloa Hills. The witnesses were prepared to sign an affidavit even to validate what they had saw and what they claimed to see. So obviously they were quite serious about it. Although I don't know by looking at the sketches that we're going to see if it looks quite serious, but
I don't know what you're talking about, Danielle. They're amazing.
So by the last week in July, a massive outbreak of sightings had occurred from one end of the country to the other. And there were so many sightings over this 2-month period with thousands of witnesses all over New Zealand that you could probably devote an entire episode to just that topic. But for the sake of time,
we're not going to.
We're not going to do it. And getting the whole chronological order in which we wanted to do things in, we're going to focus on just one sighting in which sketches were, and I'm sketches loosely, printed in the Otago Daily Times on August 4th, 1909. These sketches are from a sighting on Friday, July 23rd in broad daylight at Kelso, where 23 school children and an adult described a mysterious airship swooping over the township, quite low actually, of which several detailed sketches, again, that's their words, not ours, were produced by witnesses. The reporter for the...
Danielle, it was 23 children. You're taking the piss out of children's pictures.
You know what? That's a good point. I'm not going back. It was probably the children that drew these. So
yeah, they're probably quite detailed for children, maybe.
So the reporter for the Otago Daily Times referred to the sightings as nothing short of dumbfounding.
And
So-
Danielle thinks the sketches are dumbfounding, and here they are. aren't they very detailed and amazing, everybody?
Yeah. That,
Well,
one of
I
them
mean,
looked
I
like
guess-
Crayola. What's that?
I
I
guess
was
for
going to say
children,
one of them looked like a piece of like a Crayola on a piece of.
The middle
Duct tape
one
them.
looks a bit like a ray gun.
That does look like a ray gun.
Yeah.
or a Zeppelin.
But only one of these sketches could have possibly been done by an adult, because it was 23 children and an adult. So they're children's sketches. But apparently, according to the Otago Daily Times, is it? They're quite detailed.
Yeah.
That's their word.
Maybe for that time in 1909, that's considered detailed as well. I mean, I
And
don't
apparently
know.
Jamie looks like he's got a floating head.
It's probably
Yeah,
dead,
Jamie,
isn't it?
you kinda do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does this look weird if I do this?
There you go. Unzip a little. Let's see the shirt underneath, and then you can see the
Yeah.
contrast. There
There
we
you
go.
go. I've got a neck as well now.
That is 1909.
Mhm.
And from there, we're going to go to October the 13th, 1917. And this is quite a big one. Over several months in 1917, 3 children saw apparitions of what they claimed to be the Virgin Mary, or Our Lady of Fatima, on the 13th of each month, and therefore they were able to predict her arrival on October the 13th of that year, claiming that she would perform a miracle that everyone would see and it would make them all believe. So thousands of people gathered at Fatima that October the 13th, and I've got a couple of pictures of that. There's one, and there's another one. As you can see, there is
Wow.
a hell of a lot of people gathered at
Wow.
Fatima on that
Wow.
October the 13th. So we've got thousands of witnesses to this, based off the prophecy of these 3 children, and that all their eyes clearly were focused upwards, awaiting the miracle that had been foretold. And apparently, according to those many witnesses, they were not disappointed. A miracle did indeed happen, or what they perceived to be a miracle. It is today referred to as the miracle of the sun, or the miracle of Fatima.
Mhm.
Some 13 years later, in 1930, the event was officially declared to have been supernatural in character by the Catholic Church, and a shrine was built at the site, which to this day, thousands of the faithful go and visit this site in Fatima. But what exactly was the miracle of the sun? What did these thousands of witnesses see in the skies above Fatima that day in October 1917? Well, let me tell you. Descriptions of the events were gathered by somebody called Father John de Marchi, or Marci, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. He was an Italian Catholic priest and researcher. He spent several years in Fatima from 1943 to 1950 conducting research and interviewing all the witnesses at length. And these are the following statements that he collected. The first one comes from Dr. Domingos Pinto Cahillo, a reporter for the Catholic newspaper Ordum. I quote, "The sun at one moment surrounded with scarlet flame, at another, Danielle, what does that say?" She's on mute, so I still got no idea what it says.
No, I'm saying, do you want me to read it?
Just that one word.
I'm not sure where you're at.
At another, Orolode in yellow. Orolide? Orolide. What does it say?
Covered.
It was yellow, everybody.
Or aureoled.
Aureoled in yellow and deep purple. Seemed to be in an exceedingly swift and whirling movement, at times appearing to be loosened from the sky and to be approaching the earth, strongly radiating heat. Another witness, a reporter for the Lisbon newspaper Oh Dear, not Oh Dear, Jamie, I know what he's like.
Oh dear.
Yeah, the silver sun, enveloped in the same gauzy grey light, was seen to whirl and turn in a circle of broken clouds. The light turned a beautiful blue as if it had come through the stained glass windows of a cathedral and spread itself over the people who knelt with outstretched hands. People wept and prayed with uncovered heads in the presence of the miracle they had awaited. The seconds seemed like hours, so vivid were they. Another witness report. Dr. Almeida Garrett, a professor of natural sciences at Coimbra University, stated, The sun's disk did not remain immobile. This was not the sparkling of a heavenly body, for it spun round on itself in a mad whirl, when suddenly a clamour was heard from all the people. The sun, whirling, seemed to loosen itself from the firmament and advance threateningly upon the earth, as if to crush us with its huge fiery weight. The sensation during those moments was terrible. So some people were a bit terrified at
Could
this.
have been a solar flare.
Not everybody perceived it as a miracle. Some people were actually shitting themselves when this was going on. The next one, Dr. Manuel Formageo, I think that's how you say his name, a professor at the seminary in Santarém, said, as if like a bolt from the blue, the clouds were wrenched apart, and the sun at its zenith appeared in all its splendour. It began to revolve vertigiноusly on its axis, like the most magnificent fire wheel that could be imagined, taking on all the colours of the rainbow and sending forth multicoloured flashes of light, producing the most astounding effect. The sublime and incomparable spectacle, which was repeated 3 distinct times, lasted for about 10 minutes. The immense multitude, overcome by the evidence of such a tremendous prodigy, threw themselves to their knees. Two more. I need to take a little sip.
How did they know that it revolved on its axis and everything?
Yeah, they seem to be describing the same event though. It's
Right.
revolving, it's whirring in the sky.
I'm wondering if it was a solar flare or something, you know.
Yeah,
or,
Well, I mean, it could be, but we find out more evidence as we go on. So I don't know. It could be, Jamie.
We've got 2 more witness statements. The first one, I feel incapable of describing what I saw. I looked fixedly at the sun, which seemed pale and did not hurt my eyes. Looking like a ball of snow revolving on itself, it suddenly seemed to come down in a zigzag, menacing the earth. Terrified, I ran and hid myself among the people who were weeping and expecting the end of the world at any moment. So not everybody has seen this as a miracle. Some people are absolutely terrified as this is going on.
And I think that was a reverend that said that,
Yeah, that
wasn't
was
it?
Reverend Joaquim Lourenço, and he was a boy at the time. And finally, Portuguese poet Alfonso Lopes Vieira said, on that day of October the 13th, 1917, without remembering the predictions of the children, I was enchanted by a remarkable spectacle in the sky of a kind I had never seen before. I saw this from the veranda. So he hadn't gone to where everybody else had gathered. He'd forgot all about what the children had said, and he saw it anyway. So that is the witness statements, which are all very similar, but similar experience, but some people took it as miraculous, some people were terrified and thought it was the end of the world. It's probably quite scary, to be honest.
It certainly looks like there was something anomaly happening. I mean, all them people who witnessed it, you know, someone would have said, oh, that didn't happen, but
But so many saw the same thing. And Expialidocious is right. I mean, she says, I think I would have been, or she thinks that would have been scary. Absolutely. And especially when you think about the era of 1909, when this, you know, or I'm sorry, what was it, 1917 or 1917? Yeah. I mean, you're talking, they didn't have anything to compare it to.
No.
So it had to be terrifying.
There is a little bit more to this story, though.
Okay.
One of the children, Lucia dos Santos, eventually she became a Carmelite nun, and in 1941 she wrote her memoirs. In them, she said that Mary gave the 3 children 3 secrets, 2 of which she revealed at that time in 1941. The first secret was a vision of hell that Mary showed to the children, and that doesn't sound very heavenly, showing children a vision of hell, but that's just my opinion, don't come for me. It was full of lakes of fire with screaming souls in torment, and that would be terrifying as well for 3 kids. The second was that World War I would end, which it obviously did, a little more than a year after the children saw their first apparition. And that another great war would come if the people of Russia were not converted to Catholicism. They weren't, and another war began in 1939. Make of that what you will. Sister Lucia wasn't eager to share the third prophecy, but was compelled to write it down in the case of her untimely death. She, however, told Rome that they could reveal the secret in 1960. However, the Vatican decided not to do that and kept it sealed, and that caused a lot of speculation, a lot of conspiracy around it, and she died in 2005 at the age of 97. However, prior to her death in 2000, The then Pope John Paul II, who's now St. John Paul, actually ordered the secret to be published, and there's a lot of controversy around this as well. The prophecy, according to the Vatican, turned out to be an apocalyptic vision of a terrible persecution of Christians, including priests and bishops, in particular, a bishop dressed in white who was killed by soldiers as he knelt before a cross at the top of a hill. They put 2 and 2 together and came up with 4 and decided that this was a prophecy of the assassination attempt in 1980 of the Pope. And actually, at the time, the Pope claimed that the Virgin Mary had saved him and stopped the bullet from hitting an artery, and he actually sent the bullet to Fatima, and it was placed on a crown at the site that actually had a missing space for the bullet, something like that. Anyway, so according to conspiracy theorists, this is not the full secret or at all the prophecy, the third prophecy, because it was supposed to be released in 1960. It wasn't. In 1980, the Vatican, by their own admission, thought it had been fulfilled with this assassination attempt. However, they took 20 further years to release it. Why did it take so long? Is there more to the prophecy, or is this not the prophecy at all? Who knows? It is a bit weird that they didn't release it in 1960 and then they thought it had been fulfilled in 1980, but then waited a further 20 years.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? And
Why so secretive? You know, it's like, why can't they be upfront about anything? Anything.
Damn you, Vatican! Just tell us.
Well, is it to do with was there a decline in and interest in them at the time? So then they done this sort of reveal then to get more interest, attract more attention to themselves.
You mean to Catholicism?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, but
it's weird.
I mean, it is weird.
Why keep it a secret for an extra 40 years when after 20 years they apparently knew that it had been fulfilled?
And there had been theories like, was it an assassination attempt, or did they see the end times? Did they see something setting the world on fire? You know, because they can't be forthcoming and tell us anything. Everybody has to speculate.
Just tell us.
Would you rather be told or not told? I don't know.
Well, I think not knowing is worse because you know that it's there.
Yeah.
Look at in just given the fact of what we like to do and research and know things, I'm going to just say it's safe to say we want to know. Or at least I do.
Yeah. I'm extremely nosy, and I want to know, and I want to know. I have
to know things.
And there's a big gap now. We go into the 1940s, and Jamie's going to tell us about something in the 1940s.
Yes, I do. Apparently. Right, in the 1940s, the term Foo Fighter may make you think of the band, the other half of
the Foo Fighters.
Yeah, the Foo Fighters. But long before that, it was used by Allied aircraft pilots during World War II to describe these objects, these mysterious aerial objects that they were seeing through the skies, and they didn't know what they were and what to call them. The Allied forces theorized that this was some new technology and with capabilities far exceeding their own, and that had been developed by the Germans, of course. One side was thinking the other. However, simultaneously and unknowingly at the time by each other, the German forces was thinking that they were creating these craft and they had them. And I suppose they were both crapping themselves.
Yeah, they both thought each other had them.
No, yeah, and it turns out apparently that it was neither of them, and these objects were unknown, and they're both facing them in the daily places. They were following them in their aircraft as they go along, and things like that, and balls of light, usually some sources and things like that. So yeah, right. And some of these recorded Foo Fighters sightings are as follows: sightings from September 1941 in the Indian Ocean were similar to some later Foo Fighters reports from the deck of the USS Pulaski. The SS, sorry. That's because I said US earlier. The SS Pulaski, a Polish merchant vessel transporting British troops. 2 sailors reported a strange globe glowing with green light, about half the size of the full moon as it appeared to us. They alerted the British officer, who watched the movements of the object with them for over an hour. So
quite a long time.
Yeah, that was They do appear when there's unrest. Again,
Yeah.
a lot of UFOs are seen during war
Well,
times.
there's always unrest, really, at this stage, isn't there?
Well, there is,
Yeah.
but and that's why some people think that is just military, which it could be. But obviously, we'll get
so
into
that's
that
just
later.
one of the sightings.
That's one of the sightings. Then there's Pilot Officer Brian Lumsden. I'm sure I probably said that wrong. Lumsden, a New Zealander flying with Number 3 Squadron's night flight, encountered 2 amber or orange colour lights this time. So instead of the greenish colours, we now got orange and yellow. They followed him to an intruder mission over the northern France in December 1942. One light was higher than the other. So again, it's a slightly different but similar tales, which appeared to rule out wingtip navigation lights from an aircraft. Obviously,
They'd be level.
Yeah, because they'd be level either side. Obviously, seeing them move at the different heights and that ruled them out. The lights pursued him until he reached the English Channel. Another pilot from his unit experienced a similar phenomenon the following evening with a green light.
Traffic lights.
Because we've got yellow. We just want the red lights next, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, the story was eventually published in the Christchurch Star-Sun newspaper on the 4th of November 1955 edition. So, yeah. Then we get to Charles R. Bastian of the US 8th Air Force. Reported one of the first encounters with Foo Fighters over the Belgium-Netherlands area. He described them as 2 fog lights flying at high rates of speed that could change direction rapidly. Which
That's something that you hear over and over again as well, isn't it?
They don't seem to suffer with inertia and things like that. They can go whatever way they want, stop, start. Apparently, they do tend to go a little bit goofy if they slow down. Apparently, the faster they are, the better, the more accurate they are. Anyhow, during this deliberation, his intelligence officer told him that 2 RAF night fighters had reported the same thing, and it was later reported in British newspapers. So again, that was reported everywhere widely. Career US Air Force pilot Dwayne Adams often related that he had witnessed 2 occurrences of a bright light which paced his aircraft for about half an hour and then rapidly ascended into the sky. So again, which is another thing which happens, they follow him, tend to be studying and then fly off. And a
lot of these are very similar, like the movement.
Yeah, both of these incidents occurred at night, both over the South Pacific, and both were witnessed by the entire aircraft crew, which is, again, something what people, if you're in the UFO field, the skeptics always say,
like rednecks and hicks see UFOs, but it's not. It's really not.
If UFOs exist, why Air Force pilots reporting at air pilots and things like that? Well, they actually are. They actually are, and in fact, most of the reports do come from retired military personnel.
Yeah.
And some of the people who don't report it.
Well, one of the biggest arguments that skeptics make is that, it never comes from anybody that's an official government person or Air Force or pilots. Yes, all the time. The time. They just don't look at it because they're not interested.
And actually, a lot of the time, they don't report it because that was obviously the idea was to make them look goofy and things like that, embarrassment. So they were
It's crazy people, though, isn't it?
Talking in silence, yeah. The first sighting occurred shortly after the end of World War II, while Adams piloted a B-25 bomber. The second sighting occurred in the early 1960s when Adams was piloting a KC-135 tanker. Whatever one of them is, I guess that's a refueling vehicle. But yeah.
And one more, isn't there?
And one more, Senator Ted Stevens described in an encounter from the time he was in the US Air Force as a fighter pilot in the European theatre of World War II this time. As recounted by Senator Harry Reid, I was flying and there was an object next to me. I couldn't get rid of it. I slowed up. It was there. I sped up. It was there. I would dive. It would be there. I called. Nothing on radar. So, yeah.
It was there. He saw it. But
they're definitely monitoring it. It seems, or maybe it's an intimidation, or just inquisitive. We don't know.
Yeah, Yeah, so that was the Foo Fighters, not the
Yeah.
band.
I was gonna say, if anything, we learned maybe where the band got their name from.
Yeah.
I didn't. Who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
military people would, not I. But so now we're going to move on to February 25th, 1942,
And I
and
think we went over this slightly in another episode, but it needs to be in the timeline, so we're going to go over it again. I'm very sorry.
Yep, and we do have an image of this that we'll show you in a moment. But on February 25th, shortly after 2 a.m. on February 25th, military radar picked up what appeared to be an enemy contact. Why they say enemy, I don't know, but an enemy contact some 120 miles west of LA. Air raid sirens sounded off, and a citywide blackout was put into effect. Within minutes, troops had manned anti-aircraft guns and begun sweeping the skies with searchlights. So it was just after 3 a.m. when the shooting started. Following reports of an unidentified object in the skies, troops in Santa Monica unleashed a barrage of anti-aircraft and 50 caliber machine gun fire. Before long, many of the city's other coastal defense weapons had joined in. Powerful searchlights from countless stations stabbed the sky with brilliant probing fingers, and that's quoted. The LA Times wrote, and another quote, while anti-aircraft batteries dotted the heavens with beautiful, if sinister, orange bursts of shrapnel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thing is,
and that's what we see in the picture there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Julie?
Yep. Jamie?
So, yeah, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, I remember watching a program on this, and the people who were children at the time were talking about it and how scary it was, and they did say there was definitely something there, you know, because well, obviously I don't want to ruin the rest of the story, but
yeah.
But,
wait till you hear the rest of the story. Keep looking at the picture.
Yeah.
Keep looking at the picture, everybody.
The barrage eventually it continued for over an hour, so they were shooting up this. I mean, a long time. By the time a final all clear order was given later that morning, Los Angeles artillery batteries had pumped over 1,400 rounds of anti-aircraft ammunition into the sky. That had to be a lot at that time. It was only
I bet that actually seemed like a lot longer than an hour if you were living through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it was only in the light of day that the American military units made a puzzling discovery. There appeared to have been no enemy attack after all. Quote, although reports were conflicting and every effort is being made to ascertain the facts, it is clear that no bombs were dropped and no planes were shot down, end quote. And that was read, it was a statement from the Army's Western Defense Command. So ironically,
there's nothing in that picture.
Right. Ironically, the only damage during the battle had come from friendly fire, of all things, right? Anti-aircraft shaped or shrapnel rained down across the city and shattering windows and ripping through buildings, if you can imagine. Well, you're talking about 1,400 rounds of ammunition and the shrapnel that it just caused. So one dud careened into a Long Beach golf course, and several residents had their homes partially destroyed by 3-inch artillery shells. And while there were no serious injuries from the shootout, it was reported that at least 5 people had died as a result of heart attacks and car accidents that occurred during the extended blackout. So
I'd probably have a heart attack.
I could imagine that. Yeah.
Freaked out. Yeah. So the official narrative is that
this was not long after Pearl Harbor as well. They bound to have been terrified.
Right.
Terrified, not knowing who it was, what their intentions were. You got a blackout. You got all this artillery going on. It's bound to have been scary as hell.
And I think that's kind of what's being painted now here in 2023. A lot of fear things happening there. Just to we'll talk about
they claimed that it was just the soldiers overreacting, and it was fear because there's nothing in that picture on them spotlights. There's nothing there. You can clearly see that there's nothing there.
I do remember as well as they tried to palm on suspected weather balloon. That old chestnut. Yeah, the weather balloons that you never see unless they've got to be explained for UFOs. That's the only time when you hear and see about a weather balloon. But the thing is, even if it was a Zeppelin or a balloon, what was used during the
fired
World War
1,400, if you'd fired 1,400 rounds with
Into a balloon.
spotlights up in the sky, pinpointing it, fired 1,400 rounds of anti-aircraft ammunition
3-inch.
at a Zeppelin, it would have
From
been,
different directions. From different
it would have
directions.
been, they would have got it.
Yeah,
They would have got it.
I mean, did you see that Zeppelin go up in flames? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it just burns like anything into nothing. So, yeah, that's not a balloon. There's definitely an object there. Yeah, sorry. Go on.
There was an official narrative. The official narrative is that there was no aircraft in the skies over LA that morning, and
Yes, there is. I can see it on the screen there, Danielle.
it was panic. They're saying by the men, meaning the guns, or manning the guns. I'm sorry. That this was completely disregarded, and they disregard the hundreds of civilian witnesses who saw an object in the sky being fired upon. And we even had that photograph of the searchlights, you know, highlighting an alleged object. But yeah, there was nothing there. So
I've got
clearly there was nothing in that picture, everybody.
If there was nothing there, why were all the spotlights on exactly the same position? If there was nothing there, it was just panic. They'd be everywhere, wouldn't they?
yeah, why are they all aimed?
It's trained into the same spot. If there's nothing there.
Jamie, how dare you question the official narrative?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Spotlights
onward.
Yeah, so onwards to 1946. In 1946, there were thousands of sightings of so-called ghost rockets throughout Europe. The Swedish and Greek governments investigated these, and the USAFE, that's the United States Air Force in Europe, had a document from 1948, which was declassified in 1997, indicates that it was believed by military investigators that these ghost ships were flying saucers. Now, I will share this screen. It's got what I'm going to read to you on it because I can't read that, but I've got it typed next to it. Just to show you.
That's worse than what you had to read the other week.
I can't read that white one, so I've wrote it over here.
Yeah.
Right. For some time, we've been concerned by the recurring reports on flying saucers. They periodically continue to crop up. During the last week, one was observed hovering over Neubiberg Air Force Base for about 30 minutes. They have been reported by so many sources and from such a variety of places that we are convinced that they cannot be disregarded and must be explained on some basis, which is perhaps slightly beyond the scope of our present intelligence thinking. When officers of this directorate recently visited the Swedish Air Intelligence Service, this question was put to the Swedes. Their answer was that some reliable and fully technically qualified people have reached a conclusion that these phenomena are obviously the result of a high technical skill which cannot be credited to any presently known culture on Earth. They are therefore assuming that these objects originate from some previously unknown or unidentified technology, possibly outside the Earth. And that is an intelligence document telling you that. That's not a conspiracy theorist. That's their document, everybody. However, that was Sweden. The document also mentions a search for an object crashing into a Swedish lake conducted by a large Swedish naval salvage team of a previously unknown crater on the lake floor believed to be caused by the object, possibly referencing Lake Kolmargive.
Okay. Lake K. We'll call it Lake K.
Yeah.
The search for a ghost rocket discussed above, though the date for that is unclear. Because trying to read these documents is very difficult. Yeah. The document ends with a statement that we are inclined not to discredit entirely the somewhat spectacular theory of extraterrestrial origins. Meantime, keeping an open mind on the subject. The Greek government, along the same time, conducted their own investigation, with their leading scientist being a physicist called Dr. Paul Santorinus, being in charge of it. Santorinus had been a developer of the proximity fuse in the first A-bomb, and he held patents on guidance systems for night missiles and radar systems, so quite an intelligent man with a varied background. He was supplied by the Greek army with a team of engineers to investigate what again were believed to be Soviet missiles over Greece. In 1967, in a lecture to the Greek Astronomical Society broadcast on Athens radio, Santorinus first publicly revealed what had been found in his 1947 investigation. Quote, We soon established they were not missiles, but before we could do any more, the Army, after conferring with foreign officials, presumably the US Department of Defense, ordered the investigation stopped. Foreign scientists from Washington flew to Greece for secret talks with May. Later, Santorinus told UFO researchers such as Raymond Fowler that secrecy was invoked because officials were afraid to admit of a superior technology against which we have no possible defense.
Right, I've got a question. That document, was that officially released to the public?
Mhm.
That's a rarity in itself if you look at it.
It's not from America, though. It was
No,
Sweden.
Yeah, because normally
That's
when you
true.
people pay a lot of money to get these documents. Some people paid like £1,500 for a document, and it had four words that was readable on it.
Oh, yeah,
All the
usually
rest was
black and
I was
black.
just going to say they didn't redact anything there, did they?
No, that was actually quite clear. So good
Yeah.
on them, I suppose. Yeah, surprising.
Mm-hmm. So I think we're in 1947 now, Jenny.
1947.
1947.
And we're not where you think we are when we say 1947.
Oh right, are you giving away something?
No, because 1947, people automatically think Roswell.
Right.
That wasn't it. There was a hell of a lot more.
Right. And this is the account of Harold A. Dahl. On June 21st, 1947, in the afternoon, about 2 o'clock, I was patrolling the east bay of Maury Island. I, as captain, was steering my patrol boat close to the shore of a bay on Maury Island. On board, there were 2 crewmen, my 15-year-old son and his dog. Now, when I read this earlier, I thought one of the dogs was actually the crewman.
Jamie thought they were saying there was 2 crewmen that was his
bless.
son and the dog.
It's-
No, there was 4. There was the 2 crewmen plus his son and the dog. The dog wasn't.
I was
there.
imagining this little dog all in a little navy suit and everything.
We should add a sketch of that.
Yeah.
As I looked up from the wheel on my boat, I noticed 6 very large donut-shaped aircraft. Flying cakes. Yeah. Dahl further claimed that one of the objects began spewing forth what seemed to be like thousands of newspapers from somewhere on its inside of its centre. Newspapers, that's a strange description.
Well, that's what it looked like to him.
Yeah. These newspapers, which turned out to be a white type of very lightweight metal, fluttered to earth. So it sounds
Like
a bit
sheets,
aluminum, doesn't
sheets
it?
of metal, which sounds very similar to Roswell.
Yeah.
There was like a sort of material that bent up and went back into shape.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, they used aluminum as a cover-up story, but yeah.
It was tinfoil.
Yeah. Dahl reported that a substance resembling lava rocks fell onto their boat, breaking a worker's arm and killing a dog. The dog died. Oh,
Aww.
take a moment. Poor sailor dog. Oh dear. Oh, poor little sailor.
Poor
Anyway.
little
Aliens killed the dog, everybody.
Yeah. I don't know.
They flung a newspaper at it.
He was so talented, that dog. You used to
He
see him
wasn't
run up the mast.
He wasn't
and
a
everything.
sailor, Jamie, but he's
singing little sailor songs.
he wasn't singing a song.
No.
Oh my god.
Dahl said his superior officer, Fred Kreisman, investigated. Dahl also claimed he was later approached by a man in a dark suit. That sounds a bit like a Man in Black to me. And was told not to talk about the incident. Kreisman, when interviewed, reported having recovered debris from Maury Island and have witnessed an unusual craft. So
Here come the men
so
in
there's
black.
some things going on there, there's some evidence. So of course these little strange men in black come along.
Yeah, so that was on the 21st.
Yeah. 3 days later, private pilot Kenneth Arnold, oh, that sounds familiar, was flying near Mount Rainier when he reported seeing a group of thin, reflective craft moving at high speeds and flashing the sun like mirrors. So, yeah.
This was 3 days later.
That was just 3 days later. Bill Paquette of the East Oregonian, that's a newspaper, who first interviewed Arnold, summarized the sighting as 9 saucer-like aircraft flying in formation. They're flying in formation. Yeah, this introduced the term flying saucers.
Yeah, nobody had said it until then.
Interesting.
An explosion of UFO reports around the country, and that's when the flying saucers
and
come
we've
from.
got here, if I can just get the right slide up.
So we've had cakes and we've had flying
Right.
saucers to
On
give it a
the
cake.
left-hand side, this is a page out of Kenneth Arnold's report with a
Yeah.
picture of what he saw.
Okay.
Well, that's what he did for his lunch. He's
Jamie
cooking
thought
a
it was a
plate.
cookie, but it's not a cookie.
Yeah.
It's a picture of what he saw in the sky, and on the right, we've got the newspaper report from the 26th of June 1947 saying that the pilot in Idaho saw flying saucers, and that was where the term flying saucers came from, everybody.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from there, we're staying in 1947 because there's a hell of a lot happened in 1947, everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
And I believe it's Danielle.
Want me to go on? Okay. Thought Jamie might want to finish it, but I'll go.
Is it you or is it old, or I don't know. Jamie, do you want to finish it?
Yeah, I'll finish it.
Go on then. I'm
Right.
very confused.
Also in July 1947, the Flight 105 UFO sighting occurred on July 4, 1947, when 3 crew members aboard the United Airlines flight reported seeing multiple unidentified flying objects in the skies over Pacific Northwest. At 8:04 p.m. PST, United Airlines Flight 105 took off in a DC from Boise, Idaho. Don't know what that bit meant, but there you go.
I think the DC
Is it Boise?
I think the DC 3.
Boise, Idaho. Boise, Idaho.
Boise, Idaho, bound for Pendleton.
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 Maybe I should have read this one.
Maybe Danielle should have read this one.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want me to go on?
Go, Danielle.
Go on, Danielle. We'll let the American read the American.
All right.
Danielle,
So,
please.
During the flight, co-pilot Ralph Stevens reported sighting an approaching light and turned on the DC-3's landing lights to alert oncoming aircraft. Stevens and Captain Emil J. Smith then reportedly observed what Smith termed, quote, 4 or 5 somethings.
Yeah, that clears it up. Thank you very
See, I
much.
could have said that. I could have
Jamie
said
could have
that.
read that bit.
Yeah. Smith described the object as, quote, smooth on the bottom and rough appearing on top.
Get your mind out of the gutter, Danielle. Get your mind out of the gutter.
Smooth on the bottom and rough appearing on top. But they could not say whether they were oval or saucer-like. One object was reportedly larger than the other.
I bet it was.
Larger than the rest.
I bet it was. Was it cigar-shaped?
The crew later witnessed what they interpreted as 4 additional objects. While airborne, Flight 105 radioed a report of the sightings to the tower in Ontario, Oregon. The crew reportedly witnessed the objects for 45 miles, or about 12 minutes total, before they disappeared in a burst of speed, though the crew could not say whether they vanished by outspeeding the DC-3 or by just disintegrating. So outside the cockpit, stewardess Marty Morrow reported seeing the objects, and according to Smith's account, the 8 passengers on board had no view to witness the objects that they had seen.
Yeah, and Bob wants to know if we're still talking about UFOs.
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about UFOs.
It was rough on the top, though, everybody.
Smooth on the bottom.
Mm-hmm. And we've got a picture.
I think there's an
here.
article. Isn't there an article about that too? Or
More flying saucers seen as men of science ponder serious angles. That's a weird headline if I've ever read one. Disc stops and reverses self in flight. Disappears. So that is the article from that one. Not very well written. Just my opinion. Didn't come from me.
But as you see, these manoeuvres that we see more today, it's
There is
been
another
spoken about then.
Down the bottom there, fighter planes ready for discs.
yeah.
Yeah, they weren't that ready, were they? Because
No.
they can't do nothing about them.
And then,
So the next slide, I think you'll see something there too that
the next one, we're not going to go into detail on this because everybody should know about this, and if you don't, where the hell have you been? Where have you been? Where have you been? July 1947, 4 days after the Flight 105 incident, so not very long after the one we just told you about, the U.S. Air Force announced the capture of a flying saucer near Roswell, New Mexico. to then retract that claim and state it was a weather balloon.
No.
And they later said it was a spy balloon, but it was a balloon.
Yeah. So much contradictions and cover-ups.
Expialidocious mentioned that 1945, the atom bomb was exploded, and maybe that caused more UFO sightings in the next couple of years.
We're going to get to something about that.
Yes, that is.
Yeah.
I do have a correlation.
So I made the executive decision not to harp on about Roswell because it's so well known. I think you probably all know about it. If anybody's got any questions about Roswell, feel free to ask. But there it is.
I can tell you right now, that photo was a staged photo. That was not the material.
That's not it.
His son said about that afterwards. That is tinfoil or aluminum foil. Or
it wasn't a balloon.
It wasn't a balloon, no.
Not buying it. I'm not buying what you're selling. You can keep it. It's rubbish. It was a UFO. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And we got proof of that later as well.
Not physical proof.
I've got proof.
We ain't got part of the.
I ain't got part of the UFO, but I've got proof.
Mm-hmm.
So, where are we?
You're in 1948.
I'm in 1948, everybody, and it's a bit cold over here. On January the 7th, 1948, 25-year-old Captain Thomas F. Mantell, a Kentucky Air Guard National pilot, I've just read that all upside down and back to front, I'll say that again, a Kentucky Air National Guard pilot as well, died in the crash of his P-51 Mustang fighter plane near Franklin, Kentucky, after being sent in pursuit of an unidentified flying object. The event was among the most publicised early UFO incidents. At about 1:45 p.m, Sergeant Quinton Blackwell saw an object from his position on the control tower at Fort Knox. I believe that's where all the gold is. Is that where all the gold is?
No, that's where all the gold isn't.
Well, where all the gold should
allegedly was, yeah.
Where all the gold should be. But, Two other witnesses in the tower also reported a white object in the distance. Colonel Guy Hicks, the base commander, reported the object he described as very white and about 1/4 the size of the moon. Wow. Through binoculars, it appeared to have a red border at the bottom. It remained stationary, seemingly for 1.5 hours, which is something that an aircraft shouldn't be able to do, just remain stationary for any period of time, 90 minutes.
Unless it was a weather balloon.
Well, I wouldn't be stationary though, would it?
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Observers at Clinton County Army Airfield in Ohio described the object as having the appearance of a flaming red cone trailing a gaseous green mist.
That's
We've heard
weird.
that before. We've heard the green mist before.
Yeah, but the cone of
observed the object for around 35 minutes. Project Blue Book, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute, would later make the assumption that a trained pilot, a quite qualified trained pilot, killed himself by chasing after a top secret spy balloon, which would be quite blatantly obvious that was a balloon.
Wasn't the balloon
even if it's a secret?
Didn't they say the balloon?
You're chasing it.
Didn't they say the balloon actually was called the Mogul balloon or something? And
that was
that's Roswell.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, sorry, mixing my stories.
Even if it's a top secret balloon, if you're a pilot and you're chasing it, you can see that it's a balloon.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to kill yourself chasing it.
Exactly. I don't understand. Yeah.
Didn't come for me. Anyway, the incident was witnessed by others. In fact, one witness at Lockburn Army Airfield in Ohio noted just before leaving, it came very near to the ground, staying down for about 10 seconds, then climbed at a very fast rate back to its original altitude at 10,000 feet, which is 3,000 miles, leveling off and then disappearing into the overcast, heading at 120 degrees. So very descriptive. He says its speed, I'm going to repeat this, its speed was greater than 500 miles per hour. But yes, it was a balloon. It was a balloon, everybody.
Oh, that's a fast balloon.
There's no way.
No.
500 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It was a balloon.
Nope. Not buying it.
Who knew?
And we're still in 1948. So it's still me, but I'm going to have a drink because I've read quite a lot there. Right, March the 25th, 1948. On March the 25th, this is the one where I got evidence.
Mm-hmm.
On March the 25th, 1948, in Aztec, New Mexico, it was reported that a saucer of about 100 feet in diameter was discovered by oil workers sent to Hart Canyon to extinguish a brush fire threatening oil wells in the area.
Okay.
So if you've not heard of this, this
Bit
is
of
the Aztec UFO crash.
Mhm.
Nearby was a strange craft resting on the mesa. The oil workers inspected the craft, which appeared to be made of light but extremely strong metal without seams or fasteners of any kind. A small broken porthole was located, and the workers could see a number of small occupants who seemed to be burned or charred.
Wow.
Mhm.
The military soon arrived and sealed off the area. Surprise, surprise. The men, along with 2 police officers who had been summoned by the workers, were admonished by military personnel. What they saw was a matter of great national security and highly classified. They were told never to speak of the event to anyone. They may even have been threatened, as has been reported by a number of individuals witnessing UFO events, especially from this time period, but even up till today.
Yeah, there we go with the cover-ups, right?
So, this has been widely discredited as a hoax. However,
Of course it is.
I've got evidence.
Ooh, evidence.
The claim is, it's a load of shit, but I'm going to tell you what it is anyway. The claim is that residents of Aztec were jealous. They saw the economic booms and the tourism in Roswell, which hadn't even really happened in 1948 yet, because this didn't come about, the tourism thing, for years later. But this is what they claim. And they were jealous, so they wanted their own UFO incident, so they made it all up.
Oh, dear.
However,
Give us the evidence.
However, I'm going to show you something now. This is a declassified memo. Straight from the FBI's website, everybody. So, it's real.
Straight off the press.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
It was,
it was straight off the press.
well, it was straight off the press in 1950. It's a bit old
Yeah.
now, but this is legitimate. It was penned by the head of the FBI field office in Washington, D.C., to the FBI director, whom I believe was
J. Edgar Hoover.
J. Edgar Hoover at the time. If I'm wrong, I'm very sorry. But I
No,
think
you're
it was-
right. For a long time, nearly 5 decades. So,
right, and it references that more than one craft was discovered in New Mexico, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to try and read it off the original document as well, because that's how I roll.
you go, girl.
I need to find it though, because I've lost my page.
Yeah.
Is that my page? That's my page, isn't it?
26.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Right. Office Memorandum of the United States Government to Director FBI from Guy Hottle from the field office in Washington. Subject: Flying saucers. Information concerning. And this is what it says. An investigation for the Air Force stated that three so-called flying saucers have been recovered in New Mexico. Now we've got Roswell, we've got Aztec. Where's the other one? 3. Anywho, continuing. They were described as being circular in shape with raised centres, approximately 50 feet in diameter. Each one was occupied by 3 bodies of human-shaped, but only 3 foot tall,
Yeah.
dressed in metallic cloth of a very fine texture. Each body was bandaged in a manner similar to the blackout suits used by speed flyers and test pilots. According to Mr. Blank, informant, because his name's not Mr. Blank.
Mr. Blank.
That's not his name. There's just a black line there because I'm not telling you his name. The saucers were found in New Mexico due to the fact that the government has a very high-powered radar set up in that area, and it is believed that radar interferes with the controlling mechanisms of the saucers.
No, is it?
No further evaluation was attempted by blank concerning the, and I can't,
Blank?
and I don't know what that says at the bottom, but yeah.
Now, is that intentionally?
FBI website, everybody.
Do them
Yeah, go
radars
check it out.
intentionally or accidentally? That's the question. Did they find a way of taking these things down? Because they've been seeing them obviously before, and they think we need one of these because we need to learn how they work, but we don't know.
Yeah, so thank you very much for putting it on your website, FBI, because that was very interesting.
Did you notice that, like they say about the bodies, yet we're supposed to believe that it's just weather balloons and things like that and occupants?
It's a crash test dummy in a spy balloon.
Oh yeah,
Jamie.
can you remember that? And the other one was because someone reported like 3 naked little midget bodies, and they actually said the official answer was it was a bunch of dwarfs coming back from a night out. They were drunk and they got naked on the way.
Get out of here!
See? That was a different story, wasn't it?
That was a Mexican one.
That was a Mexican one, yeah.
That wasn't New Mexico.
People reported seeing these beings.
But apparently, the bodies are in the New Mexico ones are apparently crash test dummies that were just for some reason put in a spy balloon.
Another band name.
Yeah. Why would you put like dummies in a balloon that weren't going to have any sort of men inside it?
Yeah, and I'm still on 1948, but I'm fed up reading now. So, Jamie, tell me about this.
Right, Clarence Chiles and John Whitted. John somebody and Clarence.
Maybe I should have picked Danielle.
Yeah, American commercial
Clarence
pilots.
Chiles and John Whitted. Continue.
American commercial pilots reported that their airplane had nearly collided with a UFO near Montgomery. See, I've done that all right.
Oh, I didn't write about Montgomery. Where's Montgomery?
I don't know.
Montgomery, Alabama, probably.
Alabama. I meant to write that down, but I didn't write it down.
Yeah.
According to the pilots, the object looked like a wingless aircraft. It seemed to have 2 rows of windows, through which glowed a very bright light, as brilliant as magnesium flare. Oh yeah, I've actually done that. I think I had. Well, I probably shouldn't be saying this because that was probably my dad's.
Wait a minute, because there's something wrong with your camera, Jamie. Your flaps down, love.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Just slightly.
Your flaps down. You're in public, Jamie.
Yeah. I know what they're describing about, like a magnesium flare. Have you ever seen that? My dad had a roll. He probably don't know this until now.
Oh no, he's watching. I'm going to admit to something.
My dad had a roll of magnesium, like this thin. That looked like it just looks like a little aluminum foil, but like in a little strip. And I rolled it out and set light to it. And it flashes up really bright. Yeah, that was quite fun.
Oh my gosh, you're grounded. You're grounded.
I don't know if there was any reaction from that, and I should have probably had a mask on.
You do realise that your dad's watching.
I know, but he'd probably think, "Well, I wonder where that bloody went." But anyway,
there you go. That's what happened to your magnesium.
Yeah, it lights up bright. Anyway, additionally, the U.S. Air Force investigated reports of green flares streaking across the sky.
There's the green flares again.
Yes, which hints swamp gas.
Yes, it is, Jamie, because the government told me it was swamp gas. What are you on about?
That's what I heard.
Yeah. Anyway, these were streaking across the sky after an Air Force C-47 transport encountered a green ball of fire on December the 5th.
It was Santa.
This was in 1948 in New Mexico. So a lot of action going on in New Mexico. The pilot, Captain Geo, described the object as larger than a meteor and not arcing downward, whatever that. So it's not heading towards the ground like a meteor, I guess he's saying. It was in flight.
It was going up. It was like a meteor, but it was going up.
Up a ways.
Up a ways.
The Air Force's investigation was inconclusive. Finally, in 1948's archive, on October the 1st,
on Jamie's birthday, everybody,
a US Air Force pilot sighted and pursued a UFO for 27 minutes over Fargo, North Dakota. Did I say that?
Oh my God, they're all dangerous because Bob's just put in the chat that he was enjoying lightning. They're all dangerous, these people.
Pyros.
I had
They've all been setting fire to magnesium.
Anyway, according to the US Air Force officer Edward J. Ruppelt, this was one of the 3 cases along the Mantell incident and Chiles Whitted encounter that that shifted the Air Force attitude about UFO reports and leading to the creation of the Project Blue Book, which
I believe Danielle will tell you about.
Yeah, that's
Sure,
the thing.
I'll tell you about Project
But
Blue.
before you do that, there's a little quote, isn't there?
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah, there's a quote from George Gorman. Go ahead.
It's supposed to say George, by the way.
George F. Gorman.
Whoever typed this wrote Gipgg.
Well, I almost read it as George Foreman. I thought it didn't.
It's not George Foreman. It was nothing to do with the grill. It wasn't a George Foreman grill.
Right. I am convinced that there was a definite thought behind its maneuvers. I am further convinced that the object was governed by the laws of inertia, because its acceleration was rapid but not immediate. And although it was able to turn fairly tight at considerable speed, it followed a natural curve. When I attempted to turn with the object, I blacked out temporarily due to the excessive speed.
Is that not dangerous? To be blacking out when you're up in an airplane?
Well, yeah, that's why they've got them pilot
air
suits.
pressure.
They get tighter and everything around them.
So he blacked out chasing it. So whoever was in the other thing that he was chasing didn't black out.
I am fairly good fairly good physical condition, and I do not believe that there are many pilots that could withstand the turns of speed affected by the objects and remain conscious. Which, yes,
unless you're an alien.
Unless you're an alien, or you're in some kind of anti-gravitational field or something like that. You know, where you can't feel the pressures. But we'll probably speak about that another time.
I'm not saying it was aliens,
but it was aliens. Yeah. The object was not only able to outspeed the craft of normal vehicles or aircraft, but it was able to attain a far steeper climb. It was able to maintain a constant rate of climb in excess of my craft. So basically, it could everything what his craft could do. That could do
better because it was aliens.
Because it was aliens.
So they say.
So they say.
As I mentioned, this was the birth of Project Blue Book, right?
Boo!
Project Blue Book was the code name for the systematic study of unidentified flying objects by the United States Air Force from March 1952 to its termination in December 17th. On December 17th, 1969.
Can I just interject that I like to call it Project Poo Book?
All right, well, you stick with Poo Book. The project headquarters at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio was initially directed by Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, which Jamie talked about earlier, and followed projects of a similar nature, such as Project Sign, established in 1947, which I had not heard of, nor Project Grudge in 1948. Project Blue Book had 2 goals, namely to determine if the UFOs were a threat to national security, and then to scientifically analyze UFO-related data.
Can I just interject again? That was their public goals.
Yeah.
Privately, their goal was just to make a mockery of everything.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Don't come from me.
They're not going to let us know that, but thousands of UFO reports were collected, analyzed, and filed. And as a result of the Condon report, which concluded that the study of UFOs was unlikely to yield major scientific discoveries. And a review of the report by the National Academy of Sciences, Project Blue Book was allegedly terminated in 1969, or so they say. The Air Force supplies the following summary of its investigations. And I quote, "No UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force was ever an indication of threat to our national security. There was no evidence submitted, Lisa, to or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorized as unidentified represented technological developments or principles beyond the range of modern scientific knowledge, and there was no evidence indicating that sightings categorized as unidentified were extraterrestrial vehicles.
I'm glad we cleared that all up, Danielle. Should we not even bother doing the rest of the show?
Well, no, we're doing the rest of the show. We've got more to
The
go.
government told us it's bollocks, so
Well, bollocks to them.
yeah, bollocks to them.
By the time Project Blue Book ended, it had collected 12,618 UFO reports, or so they tell us, and concluded that most of them were misidentifications of natural phenomenon, such as clouds, stars, etc., or conventional aircraft, which, obviously some of those would be. I would have to agree.
I disagree. I fully agree.
According to the National Reconnaissance Office, a number of the reports could be explained by flights of the formerly secret reconnaissance planes. However, 701 reports were classified as unexplained altogether. Even after stringent analysis, no explanation could be given. Yet they still claimed that this posed no threat to national security, even though they couldn't explain it.
Right. Straight away, they had all that, they had like this huge document. And within the pages of this huge document, they had these 701 things that they could not explain at all. Even that they tried, but they couldn't come up with an explanation. And some of the explanations, just in my opinion, don't come from me, that they did come up with was shit. But these 701 that they couldn't explain were hidden throughout this document, well, these ones that they could explain. And then in their conclusion at the end, they completely negated to mention these 701. So when like the media and everybody else got this document, they read the conclusion, and this wasn't even mentioned. To me, if there is one thing there, one thing that can't be explained by anything, that is suspicious, it's a threat to national security. It's also something that could be further the technological advancement, which they deny that could do for science. If there's one that's suspicious, there's 701. 701. And they just ignored them.
We knew they were lying at their arsehole because some of the people who were behind this actually turned tail, didn't they? They turned to the big But also, we know now from today that where the military are saying about UFOs, we want to know about. That they're a threat if they're that desperate, and it's been all these years.
Yeah. Apparently, they stopped Project Blue Book, but no, they didn't.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, they buried it.
They pretended that they weren't interested for a little while. But
That's all right. More things came about. Look at for instance, we're moving on to 1950 next, but you can't end something when there's still things happening either.
Yeah.
Kelly says, when the government tells you not to worry, it's time to worry. Exactly.
Couldn't agree more.
And we're on 1950, and who is it?
You.
Oh, is it? Oh, it's me then. May. I don't know why I read March, because it says May. May the 11th, 1950.
Yeah.
The McMinnville UFO photographs, also known as the Trent UFO photos, were taken by a farming couple called Paul and Evelyn Trent near McMinnville, Oregon. That was on the 11th of May 1950. These photos were reprinted in Life magazine and in newspapers across the nation and are often considered to be among the most famous photographs ever taken of a UFO. I'm not convinced.
No, to me it looks a bit like a car hubcap.
To me, I've seen this a lot of years ago, and my mum had a pot that had a lid very similar to that one on the right, so I'm not convinced.
Well,
no? You think there's some hidden string in there, like it was?
Well, you might have just threw it like a frisbee.
Well, if you look at it, I hate to, I am a very
I do believe in UFOs. I'm not convinced with it. Like there's this bloke called Adamski who's got a hell of a lot of pictures of what look like fake UFOs to me, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, some of them look like bees because you can even see the grass.
We know that there were hoaxes. Come on.
Oh yeah. I'm not convinced.
Okay.
It could be. I don't know, but it just looks a bit.
I don't know. I think the size and everything look a bit.
It just looks a bit.
Yeah. I don't know. We might be wrong.
We won't ever know.
Wait, why is it? I don't know.
Just like Project Blue Book, we have to
looks like a
collect
lid.
the
It
evidence.
looks like a lid. It looks exactly like the lid that my mum had for one of our pots. That's why I'm not convinced.
Saucepan lid.
So just like threw their saucepan lid into
Flying
the
saucer, they're not lying.
flying saucepan.
Yeah. Flying saucepan.
So also in 1950, I'll just get rid of that. At 11:29 a.m. on the 15th of August, 1950, Nick Mariana, the general manager of the Great Falls Selectrics minor league baseball team, I think I said that properly, and his 19-year-old secretary, Virginia Ronig, were inspecting the empty Legion Stadium baseball
That's
field
their
before
story,
again. That's
that's
their
a-
story, and they're sticking to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the secretary always helps inspect the field.
Yeah. Because you need to inspect your
Got to
field.
check them bats and balls and.
Anyway, that's their story, and they're sticking to it. However, during this inspection, a bright flash caught Mariana's eye.
I bet it did.
And according to reports, he saw two bright silvery objects.
All right, now.
Wow.
Yes, we're still talking about UFOs.
Yeah. They were rotating while
Rotating.
They were rotating whilst flying over the Great Falls at a speed he estimated to be 200 to 400 miles per hour. He believed they were roughly 50 feet wide and 150 feet apart. Mariana ran to his car to retrieve his 16mm movie camera
I wonder what he had that
and
for handy.
filmed the UFOs for approximately 16 seconds. The camera could film the objects in colour, but could not record sound. Ronig, who the 19-year-old secretary that was inspecting the field, also witnessed the events. The film, unfortunately, was given to the US Air Force / Project Blue Book, which you should never, don't do it. Don't give them it. Stop it.
Oh.
Edward J. Rupert, who we've mentioned a couple of times before, the project supervisor, revealed the findings and claimed that the objects were two F-94 fighter jets. Of course he did. Of course he did. Mariana, however, claimed that the first 35 frames of his film, which he said most clearly showed the UFOs as rotating discs, were missing after the US Air Force analysed it. Multiple witnesses in the Great Falls area who had viewed his film prior to the Air Force getting their grubby little paws on it supported his claims that they had edited that bit out.
No.
They all claimed that the missing frames clearly showed UFOs as spinning metallic discs with a notch or a band along their outer edge. The Air Force personnel denied this accusation, of course they did, and insisted that they had only removed a single frame of film which was damaged during the process.
Oh, please.
Why would they?
And he did get his film back, but it was edited.
Damaged.
Now, we've got the film, but we've unfortunately not got the original film because it's the one after the Air Force got their grubby little paws on it. And I do apologise for the voiceover. It was what was shown on television in 1950. And it's quite funny, actually. But yeah, let me just get that up on the screen for you. The Montana film.
This is the Montana film, projected exactly as it was photographed. The objects are moving against a 25 to 28 mile an hour wind. This is the film in double frame or slow motion.
Very technical.
A slight bounce in the movement of the objects as well as the tower is perceptible. This is due to the handheld camera.
You think?
The film, analyzed frame by frame.
Look at them analysing it frame by frame.
Horizontal and steady. We will now vary the action and size of the objects and also stop the action from time to time for your study.
Oh, thank you very much.
We have just made a jump cut in the film to an enlarged size
Oh, look, they made a jump
and
cut.
reversed the action.
Very technical for 1950.
Reverse the action.
They've reversed the action, everybody.
You are now seeing the objects exactly as they were photographed, but from a closer perspective.
They've zoomed in.
But you know what?
The objects are not balloons, nor any kind of known aircraft. The images are very different from those produced by any kind of birds at any distance. The shape, brightness, speed, rectilinear path, steady motion, and separation rule out various forms of optical atmospheric mirages or cloud reflections.
That's what I noticed.
Did everybody sound like that in the 1950s?
Comprehensive analysis has eliminated years.
No, they had the same guy doing the voiceovers on everything back then, so that's why.
Did everybody have like really echoey voices? And then,
but that was the first thing I noticed. It was the distance remained the same. It wherever it went, it was like almost like it was the front or back of something. You know, it stayed the exact same distance. So
unfortunately, the part that Mariana and his multiple witnesses said clearly showed that it was a disc shape was removed by UFO.
I'll tell you what, I would have to say, for somebody who saw a UFO, got their little crappy camera, right, with 16 seconds, yeah, a little bit of film, he done quite well and got a better shot than what some people can get today. But
and as
I've seen a UFO, and it's very difficult to get, even on a very sophisticated modern camera with all the equipment. It's bloody hard to get something that's way up in the sky.
Yeah.
And as XBL Adosha said, at least they said it was not a balloon. They admitted it.
And that was a very informative, educational video from the 1950s. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Sound like one of the educational videos they used to do, didn't they?
And
1950 and cover, you know.
1951, Jamie.
1951. What happened? Let's find out. Anyway, August the 25th, 1951 was a quiet summer night in Lubbock, Texas. That evening, a handful of scientists from Texas Technical College were hanging out in the backyard of geology Professor Robertson, drinking tea and chatting about micrometeorites.
I don't think they were drinking tea.
Yeah, they weren't drinking tea and chatting about micrometeorites.
Micrometeorites over a cup of tea in Texas.
It was quite the brain trust. Chemical engineer Professor Dr. A.G. Oberg, physics professor Dr. George and Dr. W.L. Ducker, head of the petroleum engineering department.
They're quite educated, quite good credentials.
So a bunch of scientists,
sitting having a cup of tea, talking about micrometeorites.
Geeky stuff, this made the story of what they witnessed that night the more curious. If a group had been handpicked to observe a UFO, we couldn't have picked a more technically qualified group of people, wrote U.S. Air Force Captain Edward J. Ruppelt later in his definitive 1956 casebook, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects. Around 9:20 p.m., the university colleagues saw something otherworldly in the expansive Texas sky, a V-shaped formation of 15 to 30 bluish green lights passing overhead. Stunned, but still using their trained scientific reasoning, in other words, their skeptical brains, when they can see things for what they are, but they'll just pretend they can't, they figured out the lights would reappear, and they did, about an hour later, in a more haphazard formation. So, they didn't have to be that scientifically well-brained to figure out.
But they weren't the only ones. This is known collectively as the Lubbock Lights.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they were seen all over Texas that August, and we have a picture. If I can get that.
Yes, please show.
This picture was taken on the 30th of August, 1951, by 19-year-old Carol Hart. Both of them, actually, both pictures in Lubbock, Texas. And this is the Lubbock Lights, which form a triangular shape. And there's a great similarity to what you might know from 1997, which we'll talk about in the next episode, of the Phoenix Lights out in Arizona, which were also in a similar formation. But there's a picture from 1950. Two of them, they're slightly different. I don't know if the other one is the one on the right is because it's moving, so you're getting this
closer.
I don't know, but yeah.
It's more like a boomerang. I suppose
Yes.
if you're looking up, though, it's like a V formation, but on here it's like a boomerang.
Yeah.
So.
But there is a lot of similarities between the Lubbock lights in 1951 and the Phoenix lights in 1997, which
Yeah.
we can compare the pictures when we go over the Phoenix lights in the next episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, very interesting.
So, see this photo, what we're looking at.
I just took it away. There
Yeah.
you go. See this photo that we're looking at?
I don't know if you know the answer to this. I'm just because
Probably not, but ask
no,
me.
probably not. Well, you know, with the Phoenix lights, which we'll talk about later,
Mm.
what they blamed it on. Obviously, they can't blame it on this because sideways. Is that sideways or is it just the photographs?
I don't. That's the thing. I don't know the
You can't really tell, can you?
trajectory.
Yeah, they
Mhm.
blamed the Phoenix lights on several things. So
Yeah.
I don't know what one you're talking about. The geese or the flares?
The geese, I won't give it away, but
Yeah.
they blamed it on a bunch of geese and the light
Yeah.
was reflecting from beneath them.
Well,
Now-
clearly that's two pictures of geese, Jamie. Of course it is.
But if this is sideways on, like as it shows, and unless these geese are very talented geese, then that's not going to happen like that, is
Yeah.
it? So
They're dancing in the sky.
there's something I noticed. that's all.
Interesting though.
Yeah.
When you're taking everything else.
Yeah.
And from Lubbock.
Yeah, we're gonna go to Washington. We're gonna go to Washington, 1952, and there was a huge spate of sightings throughout Washington in 1952, witnessed by thousands of people. And these sightings took place in multiple locations. The most concerning of which was directly over, of all places, the Capitol building. Yeah, the heart of America's government. And what I would imagine is a no-fly zone. So,
There you go. There's a picture of the Capitol building. With the,
yeah. However, they were, and yet still the official government narrative to this day is that there is no threat to the national security.
I
Got
think they're
something
probably
flying over it.
I disagree.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of the newspaper articles from 1952. We've got all different things. Cattle mutilation as well going on. Unidentified objects seen in the sky again. Eyewitnesses story of flying saucers.
How do they assure the people that there's no threat when stuff like that's going on? You know,
Yeah, exactly. They're clearly over the Capitol building, and we all know how protective they can be about that. Anyway,
Lights in sky elude chase of Air Force jets. Air Force certain that saucers are harmless. How are they so certain that they're harmless?
Yeah.
How do they know?
So these are those multiple reports that we
Yeah.
were talking about.
There's a couple more. Air Force orders anti-saucer alert. Why, if they're harmless? Why? Well,
And when they say alert, I mean, are they saying,
and then you've got
keep an eye out?
pilots ordered to shoot down. But if they're harmless, why are you shooting them down? Make your mind up.
Yep.
Anywho, that's
I'm going to warn you about the next one here that I think Lisa's going to tell us about. So the
there's
image
no
of,
warnings needed, Danielle, because it's fine.
well,
Wait,
this
what-
image, the image is creepy.
It's amazing.
It's creepy. This is somebody's depicted, they sketched this or chalked it out or whatever, but all right,
Not
you just go
creepy.
ahead. Do your thing, Lisa.
Right, 1952, Virginia. On July the 14th, 1952, W. Nash and W. Fortenberry, pilots of a DC-4 airliner of Pan American Airways, sighted 8 large, round, glowing red objects. 2 months later, on September the 12th, also in Virginia and Flatwoods, West Virginia, 3 local boys followed a bright object into the forest, as you do, because they believed it was a UFO landing. They went to the nearby home of someone called Kathleen May, who accompanied them back to the spot along with 2 other children and teenage National Guardsman Eugene Lemon. In the forest, they smelled a foul odour, I bet they did, and saw what May described as a tall figure with claws and a head that resembled the Ace of Spades. This thereafter earned the moniker the Flatwoods Monster, but it preceded a UFO sighting, so we've added it. And this is a sketch of what the They didn't draw this. This was drawn from their description.
That looks
Of
like a
the
creepy
pub.
nun, an evil nun.
It looks like an alien grey with some sort of hood on.
Hood on. Or
It's not scary at all.
you know, one of them little Fisher Price characters used to get what used to put in the car. It looks like one of them in a little nun suit.
See, you said it looks like an evil nun.
Danielle's like, I'm never going to look at my little.
Apparently, the flatwood, it's known as a flatwood monster. It's got claws and an ace of spades head. However, that looks to me like the head is inside some sort of cape or something.
Or some kind of hood, some kind of hood that went behind it.
Yeah, it looks very alien grey with the big eyes, though.
Yeah, there's something else going on there. Evil Fisher Price nun,
Evil Fisher Price nun.
Exactly, that's what it was.
Yeah.
So when I get back home, I'm gonna have to check out my Fisher Price people that I
see if there's any evil ones left. Danielle's got a little collection of little.
Yeah, Danielle's got some Fisher Price toys.
Yeah.
Yeah, my grandkids play with them.
Yeah, she's glad I don't live there because I'll be all about. She would get me out of that room.
And how is your throat?
Don't touch my toys.
I'm gonna do the next one because Jamie's throat is struggling. Okay. 1954. Dun, dun, dun. 1954. President Eisenhower, who had been a 5-star army general, always had a strong belief in life on other planets. In February 1954, he was spending several days in Palm Springs on vacation. But he disappeared for several hours one Saturday afternoon and even missed a scheduled public dinner. He was not seen again until late the following morning. The press questioned his whereabouts. Where's Ike? Where's Ike gone, everybody? So the White House press secretary, who was not Jen Psaki, told them that he had chipped a tooth and gone to see the dentist. Sounds legit. Even at that time, rumours were that he was visiting ETs at nearby Edwards Air Force Base. So even at the time, they were like, he's visiting aliens, everybody. Okay. The dentist story that the press secretary came up with falls apart when you look into it. The Eisenhower Presidential Library has detailed reports of all Eisenhower's medical and dental records. There is no reference to a broken or chipped tooth or indeed a dentist visit related to his Palm Springs vacation in 1954. Not a thing. The library also has copies of acknowledgements that were sent to everyone that he came into contact with during his visit to Palm Springs. There were records of people who he met at the aeroplane, people who sent flowers, the ministers who gave sermons at the Sunday service he attended, and other people who played minor roles in his visit. But there is no acknowledgement of the dentist whatsoever because he wasn't there. Years later, the dentist's widow, so the actual widow of the dentist, said that she had no recollection of being told by her husband that he had done dental work on the president. Now, I should imagine if you're a dentist and the president of the United States comes to your office while he's on his holidays with a broken tooth, you're going to go home and tell your wife, oh my God, I fixed the president's teeth today. But he didn't do that.
But so do we know why they automatically assumed it was because he was gone visiting aliens?
I think because everything was going on at the time, 1947 through 48.
Maybe he had a mistress or something.
There was sort of conversations going on at the time, and
there was things going on at the time. Obviously,
I noticed on one of the pictures that one of the people who spoke about the UFO said that there's nothing in this swamp, there's nothing to see, nothing. We didn't find nothing in this. He's actually one of the ones who say they're not going to hurt you. How does he know if they're nothing? They don't exist. That's what he said before. So I noticed that.
Had he said he'd been with his mistress, it would have been more believable than the dentist story, which fell apart. Anyhow, William Cooper, who was on the Naval Intelligence Briefing Team and had access to classified documents, is a credible witness. His review of those documents revealed that ETs had contact with Earth. They warned that the Earth was on a path of self-destruction and they wanted to meet to help effectuate a long-lasting peace. The first of 3 alleged meetings with aliens and Eisenhower apparently occurred at Edwards Air Force Base in February of 1954. Navy Commander Charles L. Suggs reported that his father had attended the meeting between Ike and the ETs. Eisenhower met with 2 Nordic-appearing blue-eyed ETs, according to him. A third one stood near the door as a lookout. The discussions were apparently polite. This is according to witnesses, not me, I'm not just assuming. Eisenhower wanted to effectuate a treaty with the aliens, but was unwilling to agree to their demand that we cease testing nuclear weapons. And you'll find out as we get into the later things that they're very interested in nuclear weapons and anything nuclear going on.
Anything nuclear.
The aliens left with no treaty in place, but returned the next year to Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, not too far from the famous Roswell location, for a subsequent meeting with Eisenhower. There is a corroborating story to the ET meeting with Ike at Edwards Air Force Base. The accuracy of this story is difficult to confirm. The man, called Gerald Light, wrote a letter in 1954 claiming to have been an eyewitness to the Edwards Air Force Base meeting between Eisenhower and the aliens. Light provided details such as watching Air Force officials studying up to 5 aircraft with the permission of their alien owners. Some people, however, question the credibility of his report since he was known to have a love of the occult and claimed to be a clairvoyant. I don't know why being a clairvoyant would make you an unreliable witness, but whatever. Others, like Mead Lane, the former director of Borderland Sciences Research Foundation, confirms and believes Light did know firsthand what occurred. It should also be noted that in recent years, President Eisenhower's great-granddaughter, Laura Eisenhower, has confirmed that her grandfather, or great-grandfather, was it a grandfather or I don't know, her relative did actually meet up with ETs.
Yeah.
More than once. So that is his own family member confirming that.
Very interesting. So now I got something involving.
I think there is other third-party stories as well with some documents and paperwork to go with it where they know that he was somewhere else. There is some other evidence I've heard or seen.
Yeah.
And also, as we'll find out, he wasn't the only president. Eisenhower wasn't the only president to have encounters. Nay. But we're going to move on to now, August 21st, 1955. On the evening of August 21st, 1955, 5 adults and 7 children arrived at the Hopkinsville police station, claiming that small alien creatures from a spaceship were attacking their farmhouse and that they had been holding them off with gunfire, quote, for nearly 4 hours. 2 of the adults, Elmer Sutton and a typical Southern name, Billy Ray Taylor, claimed that they had been shooting at 12 to 15 short, dark figures who repeatedly popped up at the doorway or peered into the windows, which is very creepy. This story, to me, is like reminiscent of, like, if anybody watched the movie Signs with Mel Gibson. This is what this one kind of reminds me of.
Quite terrifying. They were apparently like jumping on the roof and everything. Scary.
Yes. Concerned about a possible gun battle between local citizens, 4 city police, 5 state troopers, and 3 deputy sheriffs, 4 military police from the nearby U.S. Army Fort Campbell drove to the Sutton farmhouse, located near the town of Kelly in Christian County. Their search yielded nothing apart from evidence of gunfire, so they probably saw the shell casings and the holes in windows and door screens made by the firearms. Residents of the farmhouse included Glennie Langford, her children Lonnie, Charlton, and Mary, 2 sons from a previous marriage, Elmer, also known as Lucky Sutton, John Charlie, or JC Sutton, their respective wives, Vera and Aileen, Aileen's brother, Opie Baker, and Billy Ray Taylor and his wife, June. Now, both the Taylors, Lucky and Vera, were reportedly, they were carny workers.
Does that make them unreliable, though?
Yeah, well, got to watch out for those carnies
Right.
who were visiting the farmhouse. And the next day, neighbors told 2 officers that the families had packed up and left after claiming that the creatures had returned about 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah. So this sounds
So, yeah,
terrifying.
The fact that they were jumping, like you said, there was reports of like them hearing them on the roof and peering in the windows.
Hours that went on, and when the authorities turned up, they had evidence of the gunfire coming from within the house to outside, but they'd not. There was
Which
no bodies.
why would the owners of the farmhouse tear up their home? You know, if they didn't think anything was there.
Just
So
leave their home and flee.
Obviously,
we've got a picture. This is a sketch.
We do have a picture. This is an illustration depicting the little green men described by Billy Ray Taylor, recorded in Close Encounter at Kelly and Others of 1955.
It's a goblin.
Interesting.
Yeah, it does.
It's a goblin.
Yeah,
Goblinish.
It looks like a goblin.
it's a goblin style because of the.
It's kind of like if you take the ears
I
away,
guess we would call those ears.
if you take the ears away or whatever, that's your typical grey alien head. If you take the ears away, got very long arms, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I was going to just say that.
yeah. Very long arms. Dragon,
Now,
knuckle
the-
dragger, ground.
Official narrative, if you can call it that, of what these people saw and fired for hours and thought were attacking their house. Owls.
Owl.
Owls.
But there was no bodies of owls, and I don't think that you're going to be shooting at owls for hours thinking that it's little goblins trying to break into your house.
Well, I'm
No.
no expert, but these people who live out in these areas, they know what certain creatures are.
Yeah,
and
they
what
know
look
what the
like and
wildlife
so-
is like in the area that they live in. I mean, come on, really?
Or they could have
really?
been hit. They could have been. Go ahead.
What's
What's
that, Danielle?
I said they could have been hitting up the moonshine, and who knows what they saw.
They
Not the
probably-
children, though, because the children saw it as well.
Well, no, not the children. But
Yeah.
obviously, there's so many stories, and we can't bring everyone, or we're just going to be here forever. So we're just going to lightly skip
But it's
over a
been
couple
through
of them.
1957 at like top speed before
Yeah,
Danielle
but
finishes
we're,
off.
Yeah, we're nearing the end here. But before we do, we're gonna end with kind of a famous account. But
Right.
between here and there, there's a couple more things we're just gonna briefly go over.
I'm going to zoom through 1957 really quickly, and then Danielle's going to finish us off with one of the probably heard of it, but it's quite a famous story, and it's the first, so we're going to go over it. 1957, really quickly. Are you ready?
Ready?
March the 3rd, 1957, Gordon Cooper, Project Mercury astronaut, witnessed a type of metallic craft without wings flying over Germany in the 1950s. At the time, Cooper believed these to be Soviet aircraft. His attitude later changed after an incident at Edwards Air Force Base. Cooper sent the crew of James Bittick and Jack Geddes out to a dry lake bed to set up data recording photography equipment. Cooper said the 2 men, both familiar with experimental aircraft, came back shaken and talking about witnessing a wingless aircraft with retractable legs silently land and take off near them. Cooper reported the incident to the Pentagon, which asked for all the photographs of the craft. Cooper looked at the photos before sending them off, and he was left feeling that the US government covered up a UFO encounter. And that is an astronaut who obviously underwent some sort of psychiatric evaluation that they put him up in space. But William Cooper.
Yeah.
Gordon Cooper, not
Gordon
William
Cooper. You said
I keep saying William Cooper. Gordon Cooper, astronaut.
Gordon Cooper.
Right, May the 20th, 1957, US Air Force fighter pilot Milton Torres reports that he was ordered to intercept and fire on a UFO displaying very unusual flight patterns over East Anglia in the UK. Ground radar operators tracked what was believed to be an unidentified aircraft for some time before Torres' plane was scrambled to intercept. Remember that, East Anglia in the UK, because we're going to get into that next time, 1980, Ventersham Forest. Spoiler alert. Right, and there's a lot of military bases in that area, so that's why, and we'll get into that later as well.
Mm-hmm.
Continuing 1957 on this speed run, November the 2nd, 1957. In Levelland, Texas, numerous drivers observed glowing objects hovering over the highway. They described them as approximately 200 feet long and shaped like either eggs or cigars. The appearance of these lights was immediately followed by electrical failures, including ignition failures in their cars. November the 4th, 1957. Two Civil Aeronautics Administration tower operators observed an egg-shaped object emitting a white light beneath it come down to the Kirtland Air Force Base runway as if landing. At 7 times magnification through binoculars, they could see neither wings, tail, nor fuselage. They watched the object come to a stop several feet above the ground, hover, and then rapidly ascend. The operators then called CAA Radar Approach Control, who tracked the object on radar. And that takes us to 1961, and Danielle is going to take over because I need a big drink.
Yeah, we're gonna finish off here with part 2 on a pretty famous story that was actually even made into a movie. So anybody watching who is a UFO fan, I'm sure is aware of this one. But we're gonna go to September 9th. I'm sorry.
I've seen the movie.
Yeah. September 19th, 1961. On the evening of September 19th, 1961, Barney and Betty Hill, along with their dog Delcy, were returning to their Portsmouth, New Hampshire home after a short vacation to Niagara Falls. And they were, I think, going up through Montreal as well.
There's a little route that they took.
Mm-hmm. They were traveling on Highway 3 just south of Lancaster when they saw a bright light in the sky. Betty, who was in the passenger seat, watched the light move lower in the sky. And at first, Barney thought it was probably an airplane. I mean, because you're not thinking UFOs, right? Betty, who had heard of unidentified flying objects, UFOs, was sure she was looking at a flying saucer. So she always had she must have just been following things closely. Barney, on the other hand, was, nah, I'm the skeptic in the family. So the Hills stopped to get a closer look at the object and let Delcy out for a short walk. And Barney remained curious, but just a little frightened, which I would be probably too. So he got out of the car and used his binoculars that he had with him, but still could not figure out what he was looking at. So he stopped the car a few more times on the way home, and he described seeing the lights of all different colors and rows of windows on the object. He described the object as pancake and shaped. And at one point he approached the object and could see several, occupants. So they must have been relatively close. Occupants, which scared him so badly, he ran back to the car to join Betty where she was waiting for him, which, hell yeah, you're scared. So the couple then heard buzzing sounds.
Oh, really? I mean, just to interject, if it was human occupants, it wouldn't be that scary.
Well, that's true, but I guess you wouldn't be picturing them up in the sky looking through these portholes or whatever windows either. So, needless to say, it was quite out of the ordinary. So, and then they also heard buzzing sounds, and they felt tingling sensations throughout their bodies, and ultimately, they drove home, and they went straight to bed, exhausted. But we'll find out that there was something that happened there. They didn't wake up till late the next afternoon. And then they realized that the 4-hour trip from Niagara Falls that had taken them 7 hours when they went over the time.
Missing time.
Now, Betty noticed the dress that she was wearing was torn in several places and had a pinkish powder on it. And the powder was later, the powder was later examined by 5 different laboratories. So they didn't just stick with one. None of them could identify what that substance was. The toes of Barney's good dress shoes, which were fine before they left, were scuffed to the point he could no longer wear them. And it almost like a dragging, the way that they were scraped up. And the binoculars that he had, the strap was broken and it looked like it had been cut. Now, both Barney and Betty were wearing watches at the time of the encounter. Everybody wore watches back then. And both watches quit working and never worked again. Shiny shiny concentric circles appeared on the trunk of the car that seemed to have some sort of magnetic connection. And they noted a strange reaction from a compass after it was placed near the circles. I don't know who thought to do that, but interesting observation indeed. So at her sister's urging, Betty called the nearby Pease Air Force Base to report the incident, because they said, well, you got to report it to somebody, find out what's going on. And as Betty and Barney each recalled the incident, they became convinced that they'd been abducted by extraterrestrials.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So as you saw through all of the images, and
and this is
ultimately they decided that, well, Betty was having nightmares or bad dreams, and she couldn't figure out what had happened, and they had this missing time. And a hypnotist decided to become involved and help them out and put them both under. Betty was more embracing the idea. She wasn't as fearful, but Barney was really having a difficult time with it. And he didn't like talking about it, but he went through the hypnosis, and
quite scary what they come out with. Some of it.
Quite scary. And they both said the same things with what they saw and what they experienced. And it turned out that tingling feeling that they had, they were actually being put under.
Yeah, and that's the hypnotist there, Dr. Benjamin Simon, that hypnotized them.
Yeah, the hypnotist. Now, Dr. Benjamin Simon, I'm going to read what he said here. And to me, he kind of contradicts himself, but I'll leave it up to you guys to figure it out. Because at first he says, quote, I feel quite confident that there was a whole experience and an experience with a UFO, if we clearly define that. Then he says, it does not involve visitations from outer space, but it does involve seeing an object which cannot be identified at the time, whatever it is. I think that it did take place, but from there on, I think it was largely a dream.
Yeah, they had exactly the same dream, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it kind of contradicts, like when he says that. At first he's saying, I just think it contradicts.
Well, I mean, like the first part, it does not involve visitation from outer space. You could argue it could have been like a different dimension, or he could have been saying it was military. Right. But then to come on and say that it was a dream, really? They had exactly the same dream, and their dream left a residue that couldn't be explained by multiple laboratories on her dress. It left the car magnetic. Really? Funny old dream.
Yeah.
Benjamin.
Now, they went on to, continue with their lives after this. There was a movie made. James Earl Jones played Barney. And I cannot recall the woman, but I believe it was like a 1975 film, maybe. Barney, he was a postal worker, or went on to be, and he ended up passing away only at the age of 46 from a cerebral hemorrhage. That was pretty sad. Now, Betty went on to, she went on to become a fixture like in the UFO world. She just wanted to keep talking about it, and she loved telling her experience to anybody who would listen. And ultimately, she ended up dying on October 17th, 2004 of lung cancer. So she was, she lived to be elderly at that point. But so that's what we're going to.
A couple of points on note. If you look at the date that this happened, this was 1961.
Yeah.
That this happened. For a mixed race couple to come forward and put themselves in the public eye, they had to really bloody believe what they were saying was true, because they come under a lot of scrutiny. This wasn't something that was widely accepted all over America, but they come forward and put themselves in the public eye, and the fact that they were mixed race, they had to have some balls in them to do that and really believe what they were saying needed to be known. And also, during the hypnosis, Betty drew she said that she was shown by these visitors a map, and she drew the map in the 1960s. and it was widely discredited because it was nothing.
It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense at the time.
Like she just drew dots and some lines and it didn't make sense. That was in the 1960s, however. What she drew had not yet been discovered. It now lines up with something, and also it was upside down.
Yeah.
Show us.
Yeah, because they're looking at it from the opposite direction because they were coming there. I'm going to show you.
They were coming to Earth.
This is what Betty drew in the 1960s, and this is Zeta Reticuli, which matches very, very spot on with what she drew as a star map that she was shown when she asked the aliens where they came from, and they showed her a star map. That's where they came from. That's what she drew, and that is the Zeta Reticuli system, which we didn't know about at the time that she drew this map.
No. Yeah. Yes, thank you, Expialidocious, for answering his question. Yeah, the movie was called, I think the main title was the UFO incident, but it probably could be found Betty and Barney Hill
incident. I was going to say Fire in the Sky, but that was Travis Walton.
That'll come later.
Yeah. Whoever she
That's amazing, though, huh?
Estelle Parsons.
Yeah. The fact that hadn't been discovered because we didn't have the technology to see that far at the time that she drew that, and that matches up with the Zeta Reticuli. That is a wow.
That's amazing right there. But so as you can see, I mean, again, we're talking about this right now, one, because it's always a hot topic, but especially now with everything going on in these spy balloons allegedly and things like that are being seen. And we always hear of the well-known ones, right? Like Betty and Barney Hill and yeah. But as you can see, and as you have seen in this episode and last, there are a lot of other incidents that have been reported that have been disregarded.
Unless that's something that you've looked into, you're not going to know about it.
Yeah, and there's always witnesses.
And it goes back to like BC. I mean, like what we started with in the previous episode, it's not just a modern phenomenon, which a lot of people would it's just something. People have just watched movies and they're just copying what they've seen in the movies. Well, I'm sure the people in 97 BC didn't see a movie.
No, but even in the sort of mid 1800s, where it was sci-fi, the only sci-fi movies were about people becoming monsters and things like that. And other than that, that was Flash Gordon, I think, and that was later on in the later.
But, even at that, and we're still not, or I'm speaking for myself. I'm still not saying exactly what all of these are. If it's extraterrestrial, meaning aliens from another planet or what have you. We're not, going to decide that at this moment, or probably never be able to. It could be whatever you think it is. But the fact that
do you think they're from another planet? Do you think they're from the future? Do you think it is just a delusion? Is it demons? Is it angels? Is it inner Earth people? What do you think it is? Let us know. I'm not going to tell you what I think until the end of episode 3. But what do you think?
Yeah, we do have another episode that we'll do next week. Hopefully you're all interested in this. It's again, there's just so much, and we at least, like we did today at the end here, wanted to just at least touch on a few that you may not have heard about. So stay with us on that.
I was hoping to fit the whole of the 20th century all the way up to recent day in one episode, but it's not possible. And I left some out, but I left them out because they were ridiculous and stupid, like the woman that claims that she had an alien baby.
Not saying it's not possible, but it's just the way they talk about
our story's crazy, so it was crazy.
Yeah.
So we will be getting to, again, the 20th century and even the 21st, and seeing what is commonly going on right now. So we will be touching on things that we're seeing right now and the relevance of it as well. So with that being said,
I just know I don't want them probing my mind or my butt.
No.
Me either. Me either, Kelly.
They can keep the probes to themselves.
The good thing about the third episode, we'll have more videos and pictures.
Yeah, there was like the further on we get, the more videos and pictures there are. Obviously, in the first episode, we had a couple of woodcut drawings because that was all we had. We had one video in this because somebody actually had a colour camera, but there'll be more videos and pictures in episode 3. So I hope we're not bored with this, but considering what's going on since January 2023 until even now, it's quite on topic.
Well, I think it's quite sort of thought provoking. Even if you believe or not believe, or what you think they are or what they aren't, it still makes you wonder. And
this all fits into
good to hear from other people.
This all fits into other things that we will discuss on later episodes as well, like your Bigfoot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the Bigfoot encounters are coinciding with alien sightings or UFO sightings. So
because there is something. There is something.
There's definitely something, yeah.
There is something, but what do you think it is?
Mm-hmm.
What do you let us know in the comments, or leave a comment on the video and tell us, and we will try to respond to you all. I know what I think, but I'm not telling you yet because
you can even believe it's swamp gas. If you believe
if you think it's a weather balloon, let me know.
Yeah.
But
it's not.
Crazy.
Yeah,
it's
but there's something.
Balloon. You can tell me if you think that, but you're wrong.
And as usual, please, if you haven't, hit the thumbs up, like us, and subscribe. And when you hit subscribe, you can choose to be notified for each time that we're going to be on. And please share
the love. And we will follow you.
Yeah, we will.
Next Tuesday.
And you next Tuesday.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming to watch. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Do, 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 do. Curious